Welcome back to my channel. I have the mini microphone out so you know I mean business. The end of February took so much out of me and I did not want to be in front of a camera. I got whatever weird cold thing is going around New York and New Jersey and I just couldn't speak. I was stuffed up. I felt disgusting. And I feel like a little bit of the winter uglies was in there somewhere as well. And now the sun has been out. I've been just like feeling like myself again. So we're gonna keep it easy breezy, beautiful cover girl, and we're gonna talk about the books that I read in February. Up first is this very cute little short story, The Wood at Midwinter by Susanna Clarke. I do wish I had read this around Christmas because it is a Christmas book. I was actually not expecting it to be like straight up religious, but I do love a like take on religious folklore. It also has these really beautiful illustrations in it. So it was just a lovely little book to sit and read one Saturday afternoon. I don't read short stories or novellas that often, but I am always impressed when I can read them, and I feel like a whole story is told in under 100 pages, and that's exactly what we got here. I will always thank Libro FM for letting me into their influencer program so that I can listen to audiobooks either a little early or right on time, and because of that, I got to listen to Deep End by Ali Hazelwood. If you are in the online bookish space, you probably heard a lot of the discourse around the release of this book, and I just feel like if you've read one of Ali Hazelwood's books, you probably should have known what you were in for in this one. I also feel like the cover is not misleading at all. This is a college sports romance book. The two main characters, one of them is on the diving team and one of them is on the swim team. They both are in that elite college level of like one of them was an Olympian already. They are kind of on track to do nationals and potentially qualify for the Olympics as well. Quite a bit of stakes inside of the sports arena of it all. At the beginning of the book, Lucas, who is the swimmer, is dating another diver, and she is kind of coming to the realization that she wants to break out of this relationship, and she also finds out that Scarlett, our main character, is into kink exploration, and so is Lucas, and that has been a tension point in their relationship. So when she gets really drunk, she tells them both that they are both into the same stuff, and it does ultimately lead to Scarlett and Lucas exploring their sexuality together. I think what I liked about this book was the different level of stake. They are top performing athletes, they care very much about their sports, but it is not the only thing that they care about. Both Lucas and Scarlett are kind of on track in the medical departments at their colleges, and they have a lot riding on them doing really well in school and doing really well in swimming. And something that I really don't like, particularly in college romances, is when the academics or the extracurriculars kind of take a sideline because of the relationship. And if anything, the relationship bolstered both of those things. Scarlett is also dealing with the trauma from an injury, and it's not just something that's mentioned. We are in her therapy sessions with her. There go my pipes. Thought they'd have turned off right now. I know they won't. I know they're not going to turn off until May, but I was kind of hoping that it's been warm enough out that they weren't going to act up. All right, they're done. This is the third book of Ali's that I've read. I read The Love Hypothesis, which I didn't like. I read Bride, which I really enjoyed. And then I've read this, and I kind of just feel pretty like middle of the road about it. I probably wouldn't pick it up again, but I'm certainly not mad that I did pick it up. And for me, Ali's just one of those authors that like, if the book is speaking to me, I'll pick it up and try it, but I'm not dying to get my hands on her book. I do have to remind myself that I filmed a reading vlog for February and then I managed to lose half the footage, and so I've been debating whether or not to upload it with just like talk through ending or just kind of like scrap it, and I think I'm leaning towards just scrapping it. So I was about to say I have talked about The Most Famous Girl in the World, but that's not true. I haven't really talked about it here on YouTube yet. So I listened to the audiobook of The Most Famous Girl in the World by Iman Hariri Kia, and even though I feel pretty mixed up about this book, I like that this book made me really think about whether or not I liked it, especially because towards the end of the book and the ending of the book, I felt really unsettled, and thinking through it, I was like, I kind of feel like that's the point. I can live with that. I usually like a good big resolution, either being totally devastated or overjoyed by the endings. I mean, I read a lot of romance and fantasy, and it can go either way. So it is unusual for me to step away from a book and just kind of be like, I don't know. I don't know what I think. I don't know how this book made me feel. I just feel very unsettled. So this book follows Rose, who is a journalist, and she gets the news that this influencer Poppy is getting out of prison, and it totally rocks her world because a piece that she wrote on Poppy essentially ruined her life. She is also pretty positive that Poppy isn't just a swindler con artist. She thinks that she is tied to some murders, but a lot of the information that she got about her for the initial piece she wrote was kind of off the record. So she is now trying to figure out how to solve these murders that are happening to the people that she interviewed, while also grappling with the fact that she definitely has some paranoia. They also mention a little bit of addiction. There also happens to be this FBI agent that kind of stumbles into her investigation, and I guess she kind of stumbles into his. So the two of them kind of link up, and then the story takes off from there. There were two pieces to this book that really made me unsure of how I felt about the book on the whole. There is this mention of addiction, just this general addiction. At least to me, it's treated pretty flippantly, and because of this history with general addiction, the way she is treated by her coworkers, her boss, and her friends makes it so that it kind of seems like she's hallucinating or ultra paranoid or making things up. And then when things start actually happening to her, it's very hard for Rose to tell what is real and what is not. And there's a large part of me that wishes that Iman had delved farther into that, because it ends up coming off very surface level, but it really comes up so often that I feel like it's a much larger piece of Rose than really is given enough examination. It also is not a romance, but there is kind of this romance that develops. While I love a romance, I do love it to be justified, and the way it ends up developing, I just wasn't totally convinced. I did really like the audiobook. I think it would be a great summer vacation beach read, and it had me engaged the whole time, so it makes me want to go look at Iman's other books. And since I got back into the Saint of Steel series in January, I am using these next couple months to do a reread, so I read Paladin's Strength, the second book in this series. So like I've said in previous videos, this series follows a different couple in each book. So this one we have Istvan, who we met in the first book, Paladin's Grace, and then we meet a nun who is part of the Order of St. Ursa named Clara. They end up meeting because Istvan battled someone and won, and part of the exchange with the person who he killed's family is that he got Clara. And then we find out that Clara is traveling because her convent was attacked and her sisters were actually kidnapped, and she is trying to find them. I love this book for so many reasons. It blows open the magic system of this world so much. We really get to explore how deep it goes. This book also particularly follows the plotline from the first book that has to do with the severed heads. At the end of the first book, we kind of find out who is leaving these mismatched heads and bodies around, and so Istvan is kind of on this quest to hunt down the people that are responsible. It just has everything that I love about all of these books. It has comedy, it feels cozy, there's still pretty high stakes, there's some really great action scenes, the magic system just I love how rich it is. I love how with each subsequent book we are introduced to a new part of the magic system of this world. The cup runneth over with everything that these books have. Obviously, I'll be reading them again. It is not often that I pick up a YA book, but I read Celestial Monsters by Eden Thomas. This is the sequel to the Sunbearer Trials, and I have mixed feelings about this one. I really liked the Sunbearer Trials because it's very Hunger Games-esque in that there is a pool of teenagers who then have to go through a host of trials, but because it's a little bit more fantastical than the Hunger Games, there's a little bit more magic involved with the ending. And so book 2 follows the consequences of what happens at the end of book 1. And I really struggled at the beginning of this book because we are kind of pulled between two places. The majority of contestants are kind of stuck with this evil villain that had been locked away for a long time and was reawakened, while our hero Teo, who never thought of himself to be a hero, is questing off with two of the other contestants who managed to escape and are going to find a solution so that hopefully this big baddie can get put away. So the book takes place between Teo's point of view and Gio. Gio has figured out that he is the son of this big bad, and he has turned on his fellow contestants because he really was seen as an outsider by them, and he really sees this as the time where he can kind of stand up on behalf of all people that have kind of been put down by these heroes. As the book went on, I just felt like the stakes weren't quite high enough. They were exceedingly high in the first book, and then it felt like it kind of shrank in on itself and became a much more insular story, which I wasn't expecting. Usually in a series, the pattern is that the first book might be a little bit more insular and then the second book really blows it open. And so to go from a pretty vast book to something that felt really internal for both characters whose points of view we were in, it was a little hard to grapple with and like get on board. I really wanted to prioritize reading quite a few romance books this month, so I picked up Viscount in Love by Eloisa James. I really liked this book for about 80% of it, and then in the last 20%, it did kind of lose me. We have Dom and Tori. Dom is actually engaged to Tori's sister, but then after his sister passes away and he becomes the guardians of his niece and nephew, Tori's sister is kind of like, I'm out of here. Dom is this kind of broody Viscount, but when Tori spends time with him and his niece and nephew, she's like, you've got a soft spot. You've got a soft spot for those little kids. And those little kids are like, the two of you are meant to be together. And so we get to see this really beautiful love bloom between Tori and Dom, but then also between Tori and these two kids that have lost their parents pretty tragically. And I think I was just kind of hoping, based on the beginning of the book, for a little bit more meddling from the kids. I think it would have been really fun to play with that. And while there are seeds planted throughout the book for the ending, it doesn't feel like they were enough or that they were strong enough. And I was just kind of like, oh, that's where we went. Got it. I did really like Eloisa's writing style, so I will definitely be picking up the next book in the series. This is Accidental Brides. And then I just went on a romance tear. I read Scythe and Sparrow by Brynne Weaver. This is the third book in I forget what the title of this series is, but Butcher and Blackbird was the first book in this series. I feel like this book could have ended halfway through. And now that I'm a couple weeks out from finishing it, I honestly don't really remember what happened. The female main character works at a traveling circus and she has like a tarot reading tent, but then also does some of the acro performances. And in her tarot work, she really likes to help women that are in tough situations and give them readings to kind of give them reassurance that they can get out of tough spots. And she kind of lets her emotions run away with her when she meets this one woman, and she kind of goes, and it's unclear like ultimately what she thinks she's going to do, but she ends up attacking the husband of this woman, and as a result she ends up very severely injured. She manages to get herself into the hands of a doctor who is the male main character in this book. She ends up staying with him. Through this healing journey, their love blossoms. After reading the first and second book, I just feel like I wasn't as on board with the like serial killer romance of it all. It really was set up in those first two books, and in this one I was kind of ready for a slight deviation. It was still really fun and flirty, but I feel like it just didn't have as much grounding as Butcher and Blackbird did. I have had this book rolling around my apartment for quite a while. This is Lola and the Millionaires by Catherine Moon. This is part 1, and then I did also read part 2, so I'm just gonna talk about them. This is an Omegaverse, but there is no shifting. And essentially, Lola is a beta who was abused by some alphas, and she kind of ends up coming into a pack, but she comes in via another beta, and she is very hesitant to make relationships with the alphas of this pack or with the Omega. The stakes in these books are pretty high. Lola is being stalked by one of the alphas she was previously with, and she's also like sleeping with her boss and her boss's boss. But I did blast through both these books in like a week. And then I finished off the month with the third book in the Mead and Mishap series by Kimberly Lemming, That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Human. So in book 1, we are introduced to Dante, the dragon in this book, and he has been waiting to just like get back to his life. He wants to go back to his castle and his hoard. He wants to maybe find a mate and just live out his life. And Cherry is the long lost sister of Cinnamon from the first book. We find out right at the beginning that she was actually taken by another dragon and has been trapped in this like underwater tower. And then through a series of events, Dante ends up finding her, she ends up drugging him, and then he mates with her because he's like, you are my mate. Through his drugged state, he can't really decipher that all she wants is to go home to her home. So after taking her back to his palace, he has to reckon with the fact that he has made a host of bad decisions because she drugged him, and then wants to win her trust and ultimately her love. So they end up on a little quest back to her home. I found this book to be so incredibly charming. I loved both of these characters. Cherry is the perfect amount of like optimist sunshine, but like has had the world turn on her, and so she's a little surly. And then Dante is just full possessive dragon. There's a really great scene where he recognizes that her shoes don't fit her, but she's not complaining about it, and so he sends somebody out to get her every shoe in her size so she can pick the one that she wants, and he just like fills the cabin that they're staying in with shoes for her. And like the rest of the books in this series, there is the main plot of them on their own quest, but then they end up on a couple side quests along the way. And it was just so wonderful and charming. I'm kind of feeling like I want to reread it already. And that is everything that I read in February. I'm pretty proud of myself for turning it around and reading quite a few romance books this month. I thought I wasn't going to read any. As always, I want to know what you've been reading, so tell me about your favorite and even your least favorite reads from February. It's time for the spiel. If you liked this video, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. You can also hit the notification bell so that you are notified every time I upload a video. I am also now on Bindery, and if you are in my paid subscription tier on Bindery, you get early access to my YouTube videos. So if that's something you are interested in, that link is also in my bio. You also don't have to be a paid subscriber on Bindery if you want to just get more updates from me. That is one of my newest platforms that I'm on. All you have to do is follow me with an email sign up, and you can be part of the free subscription tier. And as always, everything else is linked in the description box below. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will chat to you in the next one.